Hi, welcome back to my channel. Hope everyone is having a fantastic day. My name is Olivia. Um, as I always say, I had a thought or something that I want to talk about today is something that I have noticed is not saying this is for everybody, but I feel like sometimes we as humans, we hyperfixate on things. Okay, you were driving real close. We as humans, we hyperfixate. And I feel like sometimes it's because it's a coping mechanism. Because my mind immediately thinks, okay, when you hyperfixate on everything around you, people, things, just everything, if it's not perfect, you're mentally, you throw a fit, you just get angry. When you feel like everything needs to be in order around you and to be in line, I feel like it's because internally you are fighting yourself and you are trying to externalize to make you feel better about what's going on mentally. And when you hyperfixate on everything around you to make it look perfect, and if it's not perfect, like I said, you throw a fit, I feel like you hyperfixate even on your environment and everything around you too, because when you are in control externally with everything around you, like I said, I think it's because mentally you are fighting yourself, you are not in control mentally. And you will try to control everything around you, people, environments, just everything, to make sure that everything around you is perfect. And mentally, you potentially can't even control yourself, your reactions, your emotions, your feelings, how you feel about yourself on the inside, perfectionism. So, because of that, internally, you know you're not perfect. So, you will try to create a perfect world throughout your environment and everything outside of you, to make you feel better and give you some sort of relief about what's going on internally. And when I think about it, I take everything back to childhood because almost really everything the things that you go through as a child, they become adult hurdles. So when I think about hyperfixation, I'm not a doctor. There's people that have been, have diagnosis. But when I think about hyperfixation, my mind immediately goes to childhood, because when someone is raised in an environment where love is conditional, where authority is enforced through fear, where emotions are met with anger or dismissal, you can't even register how you feel, your emotions, and you can't express yourself because you get in trouble. When respect is demanded instead of being modeled, I feel like your nervous system will tell you this is what love looks like. And so I say it goes all the way back to childhood, because I think about it. So if a parent treats their child this way, I don't think it's likely because they sit down and say, this is what the child deserves, I want to hurt my child mentally, emotionally, all these ways. But I feel like it's because that parent, that may be the only blueprint that they know. And to them, harshness feels normal, yelling feels corrective, emotional distance feels like a responsibility, you're being responsible, of duty, control feels like it's parenting. And I'm like I said, I'm taking it to childhood. And I think it's familiar because your body does not register the trauma, the pain, even though it's harmful, because you're so used to it in your own childhood. And I feel like that's the danger of unhealed trauma, is it will become generational. Grandma, great great grandma and grandpa, great great grandma and grandpa, great grandma and grandma and grandpa, parents, children, next generation, next generation, next generation, next generation. And I feel like it just becomes a generational trauma, and it just becomes a cycle that is forever passed down, unfortunately. And like I said before, sometimes you cannot create something that you are already not already, excuse me, you cannot create something that you already are not. So you create everything that you are yourself. And I feel like for a lot of people, this is all that they've known. So it has to be normal. When someone is constantly grows up in chaos, the body naturally adapts, the nervous system adapts to survive it. And over time, the body will mistake that familiar pain, the trauma that you went through as a childhood for safety. So when it feels unhealthy, it doesn't feel wrong. And it feels known, it feels comfortable. I'm used to this. And that's why people always say, oh, I'm not going to repeat these patterns. But people wind up repeating the patterns that they say they didn't want to repeat and that they experienced during childhood, or my kids aren't going to be dealing with these problems. But and yet they pass that on to children, to their kids when they just said that they weren't going to do that. And I think it's because not because they want to, but because they swore that, their nervous system's default, that's what they recognize as normal and healthy and love. And it can be threatening, and unfortunately family dysfunction becomes very comfortable. And then, like I said, it gets passed down. And I feel like when things don't go people's way, when people are hyperfixating, they become angry. I feel like it's not, I don't think it usually always starts as anger. I think it is a fear of loss of control, a loss of internal control. When someone, I feel like, is hyper fixated on perfection, like everything has to be perfect, nothing out of order, zero margin for error, no mistakes, you can't do nothing wrong. I feel like I said, I feel like it's because their inner world, the world that's in here, feels chaotic. So you will try to manage the chaos externally. You will try to control the outside for a substitute and to give you some sort of relief for the stability that you're seeking on the inside that you potentially can't even give yourself. So you find a different way to do it by doing it externally. And so I feel like the mindset can become, okay, if I can control my environment, my routine, my family, the people around me, my surroundings, my life, my job, all these things, then maybe I won't fall apart. And I feel like it's a sad cycle that can happen to a lot of people. And I feel like that also creates perfectionism, and it can become very, very aggressive to the point where it's controlling you and everything that you do, because I don't think perfectionism is about high standards. It's just you have an intolerance for making a mistake. You have an intolerance for being authentic, being human, being seen as, a failure. Why is everybody driving so close? Anyway, I feel like it's an intolerance for discomfort, because discomfort reminds you of your childhood. I could never make mistakes. I could never make a bad decision. I could never just do anything wrong, anything negative, because then I would get in trouble for doing those things. So I got to be perfect. I got to be perfect. I got to do all these things perfect, but and yet there is no perfect human being. So then you're hard on yourself, and then in turn you're hard on everything around you and people around you because you're hard on yourself. And I feel like when one person believes that a mistake equals failure, just one mistake equals failure, or disorder means danger, or imperfection means a loss of control, I feel like people's nervous system, will stay in a constant fear of tension. It will stay in a constant fear of looking out for a, a mistake. Just everything's got to be right. Everything's got to be right. So I feel like when your environment starts to get out of order, that you have tried so hard to make structured and perfect, a moment doesn't go as planned. You feel like I said, someone disrupted the order, people around you, they're not acting like right how you want them to. I don't think it feels minuscule to people. I feel like it can potentially, they see it as a threat, and then that's when anger shows up, because my internal system, my mind cannot regulate the disruption. And I feel like that's very sad, that you can't give yourself permission to be imperfect, to not be a perfect human being, And so when things don't go perfectly, you lash out, you get angry, you get frustrated, you yell, you do all these things because you are not mentally, your nervous system is not regulated for mistakes, for imperfections, for problems, for um, things not to go the way that you want them to. And so that's why I say sometimes I feel like hyperfixation, sometimes, I'm not saying everybody, okay? Some people, sometimes, hyperfixation can be used as a coping mechanism because, like I said, you hyperfixate on a perfect life, but your life will never be perfect because there is no perfect human being and no perfect life because you're going to make mistakes, bad things are going to happen, but you try to perfect a perfect, quote unquote, have a perfect life because I feel like it's because you're losing control on the inside. And hyperfixation gives you the illusion that everything is perfect. It gives you the illusion that you are the one in control. If I fix this, it'll be better. If everything looks right, I'll be okay. If everything is in order, I'll be okay. If nobody makes no mistakes, I'll be okay. If nothing's out of place, I can control myself. I won't lose it. I'll be all right. But like I said, there is no perfect life. There is no perfect people walking around here on this earth. Life cannot be controlled because the moment you think you can control it, it will show you that you are not in control because something bad will happen in your life. Something will not be planned will happen. Something that you weren't expecting will happen. And whether that's people, places, or things, I don't think life overall can be controlled. And so you're constantly setting yourself up to see these mistakes, to see these inadequacies, or just to see failure, but and yet you're hyperfixating on a perfect life when there is no perfect life. And like I said, that frustration when something doesn't go as planned like you want it to, it turns outward. First, it always starts with yourself because everything that you internalize will eventually be externalized. So when perfection is not possible, when things are just going wrong, the pressure has to go somewhere. And it first turns inward. It comes to you, the shame, the guilt, the self-criticism that you may have, the rage, the anger that you have towards yourself, the constant dissatisfaction. You're so disappointed in yourself. And then once it builds up so much on the inside, you externalize that. It's the yelling, it's the snapping, it's the harsh correction, it's the emotional damage that you do to people around you, the emotional, who may even know, physical, mental. And I don't really think that is about the things that are going on outside of you, people, places, and things. I feel like that's just because it's anger that has to go somewhere. It's anger that is building up so much in people and how you feel that it has nowhere safe to land. So the first person that you see, you're taking all that anger out on them, or the first thing that doesn't go as planned, you're taking it out on that person or that thing. So it lands, like I said, it lands on whoever is the closest, and it lands on whoever is, the most susceptible sometimes to it. And like I said, there is no perfect human being. There is no complete perfection in this world. There is no perfect environment. There just is no perfect life. So when you're constantly trapped in a cycle that you can't escape of this hyper fixation, I think accepting that imperfection, that authenticity of how human beings are, because human beings are not going to be perfect, I think that would require some self compassion. And unfortunately, a lot of people have never been taught that self compassion. Their parents never taught it to them. I'm sure their parents never taught it to them. Their parents never taught it to them. Their parents never taught it to them. That's why I say it's like a generational cycle. So instead of, nobody ever gave me permission to make a mistake, to be imperfect. And because of that, you hold it all in on the inside. You tighten up. Instead of healing, you start controlling more. Instead of regulating yourself, regulating your emotions, your feelings, just overall on the inside, you start regulating on everything around you. And I feel like that it can cause a lot of damage to the people around you and the environment that you're in. And even to, I feel like it's even bad to children too, because children aren't gonna understand where all that anger is coming from. But unfortunately, they will learn. I make things worse, or I'm the problem, or I have to be perfect, or I can't be anything but perfect, or I won't be accepted, or I just don't feel if I don't do this, and this correctly, then maybe I'll hear the words, or I'm proud of you, or maybe I'll hear the words, I'm safe, or I feel loved. And I feel like it's generational damage that you potentially teach your children that is forever going to stick with them for the rest of their life and forever will be passed down until generations unless they do the work themselves. And all that chaos will become that child's internalized self-hatred, internalized self um what's that called, not conscience, but that the voice in their head will tell them, no, you're not good enough, or oh, you need to try harder, or oh, I'm always a problem, or I always make things worse. And I feel like that is how perfectionism doesn't just damage the person, it can spread generations. It can spread to the child, the grandchildren, generations you haven't even met yet that haven't even been born into this world. So I say this to say that I don't feel like perfection is a strength. I feel like it's fear dressed up as control. I feel like anger is not, sometimes anger is dysfunction, or you can't, not, it's regulation without the tools, or this regulation. What is that called? I think that's that word. I don't know. I just feel like stuff it happens when someone refuses to address the things that are happening on the inside, so they try to control and dominate everything that's happening on the outside. Like I said, maybe they were never taught self-love, self-compassion, grace, empathy that you give to yourself. So then they internalize that because I was never given permission. So this feels normal for me to pass down all these things to generations after me, or just my environment overall, because this is all that I know. And I don't know how I don't know how I was, things like this make so much sense to me. I think I just see the patterns, the things I've heard people say, just listening, talking to people, talking about how perfection and hyperfixation can just, I don't know, you start being hard on yourself because that's what you remember from your childhood, or that's how you were taught. You never, like I said, we're never taught that compassion, that empathy, that grace that you give to yourself. And so when I see stuff like this, or the hyperfixation used as a coping mechanism, perfection, perfectionism when there is no perfection in this world, and then you get angry when things are out of order, or out of, do not fit the way I want them to, everything's not lined up, I see the loss of control, internal loss of control, because everything, like I said, everything that is externalized was first internalized. I see the internal loss of control, like I said. I see the external hyperfixation because you're fixating because something in here you cannot control. I see the frustration that you cannot escape. It's inevitable because when you're trying to look for perfection in an imperfect world, you're going to get frustrated because nobody's perfect. Neither is things around you perfect. Life isn't going to be perfect. I see the trauma it can spill onto other people, the things that people are left to clean up, just, and their internal monologue, that's what I was looking for. Their internal monologue starts becoming that voice of I was never enough, or the hyperfixation, or I'm not perfect, or I gotta act like I'm perfect even though I'm not perfect in an imperfect world. But I don't know. I don't, and I'm not sitting here judging, but this is just insight. This is just, I love the study of psychology, so this is just psychological insight, things that I have just seen, and just the trauma and the pain that spreads from generations because of hyperfixation, because of perfectionism, because potentially you were never shown that compassion, that empathy, that grace, that love was extended to you, that you can make a mistake, you can be imperfect, you can be authentic as a human being and make mistakes. But I don't know, this is just something that I felt like talking about today, that just how it can just be so detrimental for generations unless one person decides that this is not what I want anymore, or I got to be better than this, or what I learned wasn't right, and just giving yourself that grace, that empathy that you never even potentially even heard. So I don't know. That was just something that I wanted to share today. Um, yeah, I hope everyone has a fantastic day. I hope y'all could hear me. I don't know if my mic died or not, but it looks like it's still green. It looks like it's still good. So, yeah, thank you for watching this video, and I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Can you believe I've been talking for 21 minutes? Wow. 2 years ago, I would have been like, even a year ago, I wasn't even talking for 21 minutes. But anyway, hope everyone has a fantastic day, and I'll see you guys next time.